One would think the ultimate life form has had his fair share of restless evenings, enough to last for several mortal lifetimes, and yet here I find myself tonight. Mildly comfortable breeze rustling through my quills, solemnly perched on a forest-side hill out of view, the glittering stars above me reminding me of home, and yet not a single instance of quiet in my thoughts. Of all the varieties of restless nights I've had, this is by far the most egregious type. Mind bouncing around from subject to subject until the tireless sun creaks over the horizon, and I'm made to face the fact that I've just spent another night pondering over things that either ultimately don't matter or matter significantly. The lack of an in-between stopped bothering me ages ago, however. In fact, it was on one of those particularly harrowing nights that I cracked the code. The ultimate life form doesn't need sleep, but, well, tiring myself out, I've found, goes a long way towards a reprieve from this overactive mind of mine. So just like then, and all the other times I've utilized this method, I hop up to find a private place further into the forest, and since nobody's around that I can tell, I take care to start the process on the way. It's gotten simpler since the first time. A series of strokes along my hot inner thigh is enough to get the wheels turning in a completely different manner than beforehand. It's predictable, but efficient. And it only takes a few minutes for the head of my erection to poke out of its sheath, for me to know that there's no going back at this point. Deja. I take care not to scrape my back quills against the bark as I slide cautiously down a trunk, descending into darkness the farther I go, until I'm sitting perched against the foot of the tree with my hand steadily stroking the remainder of my dick out into the open. I must look pretty crude right now. "Yeah, you do," is what I can hear a particularly sultry voice saying in response, likely throwing a handsome in there for good measure, but, well, as Rouge's body flashes through my mind, I'm not sure whether to curse or thank tonight's overactivity, as I find myself sucking air through my teeth while simultaneously using my bottom two fingers to grip and massage my base. I figure the show might as well go on so long as it's serving its purpose. Rouge is beautiful, stunningly confident in the way she strides along, and the way she bears her gifts. I'm gripping myself harder now, stroking so full and so frequently that the friction has nullified the slight sting of the quickly cooling air around me. I imagine one of the nights we've had where I've been graced with those gifts up close. I imagine gently pulling down her barely concealing top to the sultry sound of a coo and the gentle flap of her wings in anticipation. I imagine the imprints my hand leave on her soft, warm flesh, the springiness of her nipples between my fingertips. I imagine a flash of blue in the corner of my eye. I've imagined too far. Huh? My eyes shoot open, and I know I was in the fantasy deep because when exactly did I close them? Thankfully, after a quick scan, I find there are no blue quills to be seen. Thankfully, because my breath had gotten considerably more ragged, my erection more solid and prominent. But then that means showing up uninvited again, faker. Irresponsible to say out loud, perhaps, but it's only a whisper in my current state, more muscle memory than anything. Sonic is absolutely no stranger to my thoughts, or is it the other way around? It's this useless train of thought that makes me realize I'm officially in a different headspace entirely. Well, if the faker showing up in the first place wasn't a hint. But just like Rouge's presence, I realize I can work with this. After all, Sonic's occasional gallivanting around talking about how he could take both of us at the same time had not fallen on deaf ears. Quite the opposite, actually. I feel my eyelids shut again, head resting back against the tree, hand taking a brief break to stroke my inner thigh before the real work begins. Imagining Rouge straddling my lap, leaning in with a warm whisper and a sneaking suspicion that Big Blue is just blowing air himself. Then, before I realize, the fantasy flash steps ahead. Rouge pinning Sonic down on his back by the shoulders as he shoots her one of his usual cocky grins. She looks back at me, back arched in mid-position switch, and it seems the blue hedgehog beneath her suddenly lights up, making an effort to pull me closer with his legs. Looks like you remembered I'm here too, Faker. I can't help but lick and bite my own lips at the double daring glare I imagine they'd shoot back at me. And it takes me no time at all for me to start stroking myself again. Rouge repositions herself, and my heart skips a beat as I imagine her sitting on Sonic's face mid-taunt. He instinctively reaches up to grab her thighs and bring her closer, surprising even her. Sonic the Hedgehog is not one to turn down from a challenge, and I'm regrettably close. I stroke some fine blades of grass within my reach, pretending it's the soft fur of the Faker's belly stretched out before me. I swallow and lick my lips again as I imagine how sweet Rouge must taste at the height of her pleasure. I'm throbbing now, leaking, and then thoughts of Sonic struggling despite himself moaning into Rouge as she takes great glee in having felled the blue blur. That's what does it. That's what sends me over the edge. For a brief second, I'm as new to the world again as the day I came out of my pod on the Ark. And as I come down, I can't help but realize, well, it takes a second before I realize anything, but it dawns on me the lack of my participation in my own fantasy. I'm gonna have to fix that. Admittedly, this should not be the main concern right now, but it's all I can think about. Well, I focus the best I can on cleaning my fur off and making sure there isn't any evidence left behind that nature can't take care of. My body heaves a sigh as I force it to stand, and I can't help but smile slightly, save for wanting to find Rouge and the Faker as soon as day breaks. The state of my mind is finally little more than a whisper.